The Stone Zone with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome, I'm Roger Stone, and yes, you are back in the Stone Zone. We have 2 focuses today. The first one is on New York City Mayor Eric Adams. You remember Adams, he is the liberal Democrat who ran for mayor of New York City as an outspoken advocate of that city being a sanctuary city. He went so far as to say that illegals were welcome in New York City. Now he's whistling a very different tune. The only opposition he ever voiced to open borders and the policy of Joe Biden, well, that was none whatsoever. His real issue was the fact that the federal government would not write him multi-million-dollar checks to deal with the problem that they had created. Indeed, the invasion of illegals into stable New York neighborhoods where they have been housed in migrant shelters has caused an extraordinary crime problem. We actually reported here on the Stone Zone about a decision to put a migrant shelter next to a Catholic girls' school in Staten Island. But now that Eric Adams has been indicted by a federal grand jury and faces very serious charges, he seems to be whispering a very different tune. Joining us to break this down is my friend Sal Greco. Sal is a 14-year veteran of New York City Police Department with an unblemished record of service to the people of New York, sometimes assigned to some of the most dangerous precincts in New York City for the graveyard shift. As many who follow the Stone Zone know, Officer Greco was terminated by the city of New York simply because he is a friend of mine. They terminated him because they used a city regulation by the police department that says one cannot associate with individuals who in the past may have or in the future may involve themselves in criminal activity. You just described the entire top brass of the New York City Police Department, every one of whom has broken that rule. But you see, they're not Sal Greco. Joining us now, the host of the Sal Greco Show and my good friend, Officer Salvatore Greco.
Thank you, Roger. Thanks for the great introduction.
Well, Sal, nobody knows more about this than you do. Since the time that they unjustly, and I would argue illegally, terminated you, you have a federal lawsuit pending against the city of New York. The perps have moved 3 times to have it dismissed. You're very fortunate you've gotten an honest, unbiased judge who has refused to dismiss that suit. Now the city is stalling in their depositions. I understand they turned over material to you in discovery, which actually excludes documents that they referred to during your administrative trial. Somebody's going to get disbarred here and others are going to pay a high price, but it's not really what we're here to talk about today. For some reason, many Trump supporters seem to buy into this narrative that Eric Adams was only targeted for prosecution because he's such an outspoken critic of Joe Biden's open borders policy. As I said in the opening, that's nonsense. He was a full-throated advocate of New York City being a sanctuary city. His only criticism of the Biden administration was that they wouldn't write him a multi-million-dollar check to deal with the problems. So now, however, he's in deep, deep trouble. Now, some people, I was watching, I guess it was Greg Gutfield's show on Fox, and I saw one of the commentators say that, Well, the charges of Eric Adams are really minor. I mean, he had a coach seat on Turkish Airlines and they bumped it up to first class. Somewhat more serious than that, is it not, Sal?
It's a lot more serious. And his whole, we'll say the whole mantra of how he started his mayoralship is more important here. So we'll go back. So first of all, he campaigned stating that New York City would remain a sanctuary city. Eric Adams himself is for illegals voting in the local elections. He's never changed his position, Roger. He's never said, oh, I don't believe. That's what he believes. He then, in October of 2023, at a press conference, stated that the official policy for New York City is that the borders are to remain open. The only reason.
Let's show that video just because we like to document everything we say here on the Stone Zone. Let's roll that quick video.
We believe the borders should remain open. That's the official position of this city.
There you go.
Yeah, it's not me. I know people like to say, well, Sal, you have an axe to grind. That might be so, but doesn't make it that I'm lying about anything either. It's not saying that I'm lying here. So when we go, you just saw that he has his open border policy. He also spent, the government gave him $6.4 billion, or he said that he spent, and the government gave him $100 million, I believe. But we don't even know how he requisitioned this, because as you know, there are problems with the migrant shelter. So one of the issues also with the migrant shelter here, Roger, is that his pal, Tim Pearson, was in charge of the migrant shelter contracts, like you stated about the shelter that was in Staten Island. I believe the Roosevelt Hotel is another migrant shelter contract that's coming under fire. And Tim Pearson's actually being federally investigated, not only for that, for many other infractions, we'll say. So Eric, some of this is very self-inflicted. He's a highly conflicted individual who surrounds himself with highly corruptible people. So when he says he wants the money, when he's saying the government won't give me money, as you correctly stated, he's talking about these migrant shelter contracts because they were making money off of that. That's why he is now doing press conferences by himself, because everybody got subpoenaed. Everybody's in a grand jury. Now, the actual indictment, as you stated, what he's actually being indicted for, the most important thing is he received $10 million in public matching funds through Turkish, that is foreign, straw donors via the 8-to-1 public matching fund program New York City has. That's $10 million of New York City taxpayer money. That's not $10 million of his own money. So essentially, he's a crook, just like Bob Menendez before him that was prosecuted and convicted in New York City. There's nothing political about this, Roger. Their investigation started in 2021. That was prior to him becoming mayor or even winning his primary. He was under investigation in early 2021. That's when it started. So why is this political? What's this got to do with the migrant crisis or whatever you want to call this, the undocumented situation that they have there in New York City?
I mean, here's a video of him making very clear that he believes New York State or New York City is a right to shelter state, meaning that the illegals that he now seems to be so hot to expel, well, he said they had a right to be there. Let's roll it.
As the mayor of the city of New York, I don't, weigh into immigration issues, border issues. I have to provide services for families that are here, and that's what we're going to do. And that's what our responsibility as a city. I'm proud that this is a right to shelter state, and we're going to continue to do that.
I think that proves your point, Sal. But now suddenly he's changed his tune. He showed up at the UFC fight when Donald Trump was in New York City recently to try to shake the president's hand. It looked to me like the president shook his hand quickly and kind of blew him off. But there are Republicans who seem to be out repeating this false narrative that, oh, no, he was only targeted because he's a critic of Biden's open borders policy. I happen to know there's a grand jury investigation now looking at whether Eric Adams paid certain New York City-based Republicans to parrot that line and where those monies came from. The mayor is now suddenly, he's gung-ho for cooperating with immigration czar Tom Homan. He actually said that he was looked forward to meeting with Homan, and suddenly Eric Adams doesn't care about being canceled. Let's take a look at that.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the board of czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're open to that?
Open to
hearing what their plan is to deport some of these folks, and you think the city, in some circumstances, should cooperate with ICE.
Let me. You know what's interesting? And I was talking to the team the other day. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city and what they said in our country. They said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. That was their position. So this is not a new position, because in the state in the era of cancel culture, no one's afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me, because I'm going to protect the people of this city. And if you come into this country, in this city, and think you're going to harm innocent New Yorkers and innocent migrants and asylum seekers, this is not the mayor you want to be in the city under.
By the way, I want to compliment Mayor Adams on his double-breasted waistcoat. That's very rare. He is, without any question, the best-dressed mayor since Jimmy Walker, the shortest mayor since Abe Beame, the most incompetent mayor since Bill de Blasio, and the most corrupt mayor since William O'Dwyer. It's extraordinary to see this metamorphosis going on, because what he's doing here, folks, is he's trawling for a pardon from President Donald Trump. He's also, interestingly enough, and this has to be quite politically incorrect, he's weighed in on the issue of Daniel Perry, who is the man who actually protected a woman from being assaulted by a thug on a subway, and now is facing serious charges in the New York courts. First of all, Sal, well, we've got a quick video of that. Let's roll it, and then I'd like to hear your analysis of the Perry case.
You should look at that on a multi-faceted approach of everything that's wrong with the system that we're facing. One, look at the photo that they used to show the victims. It seemed like it was a young, innocent child, right, who was brutally murdered, and it gave that impression. When you looked at the photo that was being used, it wanted to set up in the minds of people that we were dealing with a young, innocent child that, just a Michael Jackson intimidator that, was just brutally assaulted. Then you look at the complete failure of our mental health system, right, a complete failure from the days of closing psychiatric wards and having those who needed help just turned over into the street without giving any safety net to accept them. Parents reach out to me all the time and say, I'm watching my child go down, or my loved one, my family member going down this serious decline. What do we do? A system where you brought people into hospitals, gave them medicine for one day, and sent them back. The young man in this case was going within our system, throughout the revolving door of our system. Now, we're on the subway where we're hearing someone talking about hurting people, killing people. You have someone on that subway who was responding, doing what we should have done as a city and a state of having a mental health facility. Those passengers were afraid. I'm hoping that the jury will hear all the facts. Based on all the facts that's laid out, a jury of his peers will make the right decision. And I don't want to prejudge that. I'm just looking at all the facts that are involved here and what we did to get to where we are and what we're seeing. Because that could have easily been a case where you saw 3 innocent people murdered on our street 2 weeks ago.
All right, Sal, the Daniel Perry case, this couldn't seem more obvious to me, but turns out that the woman who's prosecuting this case in the past has been far more liberal in her recommendations, sentencing recommendations for people who committed violent crimes because of their backgrounds of a lack of privilege or race. I thought we had a colorblind criminal justice system. Tell us about this case, if you will, because you were a police officer for almost 15 years.
So the case is actually Daniel Penny, who was a Marine he was on the train and saw this Jordan Neely, who was, I guess, causing a disturbance. Obviously, as you know, and Eric himself loves to tout how crime is down, but the transit crime was actually very high. The numbers from 2023 to 2024 are actually higher. That's another thing we could discuss with the crime statistics, but that has a major factor in this case. So the police officers are very, we'll say, scarce around transit, especially at this time. So Jordan Neely was on the train giving a disturbance, bothering people. He's mental. He got mental issues, but he's also been arrested numerous times. So Daniel Penny took it upon himself to try to quell the situation. The guy was irate. He was, I think he tried to assault somebody on the train. So he put him in what they're calling a chokehold. That's also a move to detain someone. And unfortunately, Jordan Neely perished right after this, and they try to charge Daniel Penny with the murder. So he's been in court, and they charge him with murder. And I think it's really self-defense, and he didn't mean to murder the guy. So now we're seeing the trial, and actually this morning, Jordan Neely's father hit Daniel Penny with the civil rights lawsuit, for damages because his son was killed. So he just got hit with that, as his verdict may come down today or might come this week. We don't know when they're going to announce the verdict. But I like to go back to the video you pointed with Eric Adams. When this situation first happened, Roger, there's a video of it. Eric Adams is saying how Jordan Neely, who is the person that perished here, he said that my son's name is Jordan. And he repeated that. And he goes, another one of our own was taken today. What does he mean by that, Roger? And I'll tell you what it means. It goes back to his ways of the Al Sharpton / Louis Farrakhan class. He's making it about race, just like when Eric called, Caucasian police officers crackers. He said that he, quote, I kicked some cracker's ass, end quote. That's what he says. So when Eric wants, he plays to the low information base. Then he goes back. Now he's trying to act like he's MAGA. This guy is a snake. He's just shedding his snake skin right in front of everyone's eyes. And hopefully the jury will say that Daniel Penny is found not guilty. That should be the verdict here. That was self-defense. It's just very unfortunate that the whole situation happened that day. And that is what I'm hoping for, is a not guilty verdict.
We should all be praying for that. Sal, we do want to talk about your own case only because it demonstrates that Eric Adams and many others in the New York City Police Department brass have been held to a very different standard than you have. There is a regulation that says that police officers cannot associate with those who in the past or in the future may engage in criminal activity. So they terminated you because you're a friend of mine. Okay, fine. But Eric Adams was a bodyguard for Mike Tyson, a convicted felon. He was brought up on the same administrative charge. I think they docked him, I believe it was 5 days of his vacation. In your case, you lost your job, you lost your pension, and they refused to give you a good conduct letter, which means if you chose to work as a law enforcement officer in a different jurisdiction, say in Florida where you now live, you wouldn't be able to be hired. That's just one example. What about when Cardi B, the convicted gang member with a long criminal rap sheet, was invited to speak at the New York City Police Academy? I would argue that every single officer who came in contact with her is in violation of that same regulation under which they terminated you. But None of them have been fired. None of them have even been brought up on administrative charges. This is what we call the two-tiered justice system. I do also want to focus specifically on the officer who conducted the investigation into you, a gentleman named Jeremy Ornstein. He won't be with the New York City Police Department much longer. You have a lawsuit pending against him personally. In the investigation of you, when he sought your cell phone records from Verizon, when he sought the video records from the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., where you and I stayed on the 5th. By the way, we never left the hotel grounds on the 6th. At first, they denied those requests. Then he reapplied, saying that your investigation was a narcotics investigation, which, of course, it wasn't. Unfortunately, this officer, Mr. Ornstein, has a long record of legal abuses. And I want to talk about that case when we come back on the other side. The other thing we're going to talk about the fact that all of a sudden, Eric Adams he's a major supporter of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's Department of Government Efficiency, which is pretty laughable. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be right back with our friend Sal Greco. Last week was the 61st anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Now, the Kennedy assassination continues to fascinate Americans. I think it's because, well, most Americans believe we still haven't been told the truth. And that's why I wrote The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. It is a New York Times best-selling book, heavily documented and heavily footnoted. I make the case that using fingerprint evidence, eyewitness evidence, deep Texas politics, and conversations I had with President Richard Nixon, among others, in his post-presidency, that Lyndon Baines Johnson was at the helm of a plot to murder President John F. Kennedy. I think I firmly established motive, means, and opportunity. This is a book, if this subject interests you, you don't want to miss. It would make a great Christmas present for anyone in your family who's a history or political buff. Now, you can get your copy by going to themanwhokilledkennedy.com, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. And when you buy it there, you can get it signed. You can also get it personally dedicated to you. So you could go to Amazon, you could go to Barnes and Noble, you could buy the book there. If you choose to do so, please get the paperback version because it has 3 additional chapters that I wrote after the hard copy version was printed. So the paperback version is really preferable. But if you're interested in history and you want to know about the shocking truth regarding the murder of JFK, well, I think this is the book for you. Let me also say that those who say that the Central Intelligence Agency was deeply involved in Kennedy's murder are correct. Those who say that organized crime was deeply involved in Kennedy's murder, they're also correct. Those who say that the Secret Service and the FBI were involved in his murder, well, they're also correct. Those who say that big business and the banks had a hand in Kennedy's murder, I established that they're right also. And then, of course, there's big Texas oil. Their motivation is the fact that JFK was trying to repeal the oil depletion allowance. But the common thread of all of these organizations is one Lyndon Baines Johnson. Folks, my book reads like a murder mystery. We're going to put it up one more time. You can order it for Christmas by going to The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Pardon me, themanwhokilledkennedy.com. Themanwhokilledkennedy.com. If you order today, we can certainly get that to you by Christmas. Check it out. I think you will like it. All right, we return to our guest, Sal Greco. He is a 14-plus year veteran of the New York City Police Department, decorated for the most DUI arrests in given years. a man with an unblemished record of service to the people of the city of New York, unfairly terminated from his life's work and then harassed by the New York City Police Department. When you put a police officer under surveillance, you can't be so stupid that they don't know that. Sal, your situation was particularly outrageous. Your father passed during the time that you were under investigation. You had depleted all your personal funds, paying for your legal defense. You could barely get the money to bury your own father, and they tailed you when you went to his memorial service. This is outrageous. And Jeremy Ornstein, if you're out there, justice will find you, my friend. You cannot abuse people like this. Sal?
Yeah. So what happened there with Jeremy Ornstein is he's got a history of this. There was a prior case with, I believe, two sergeants. They called the Nieves brothers, and he was investigating them, saying that they were having a party and they were hiring, female escorts. So he translated. By the way, he got an illegal warrant for that too. I mean, this guy that's all the guy does. He does administrative subpoenas for warrants that would be something you would do in a criminal case, not a internal investigation in the New York City Police Department. So he transcribed, he got illegal wiretaps. He was listening in on wiretaps on the phone. And what he transcribed as them speaking in Spanish about having female escorts come to a party was actually regular dancers being hired for one of the brothers' birthday party. He got caught perjuring himself, and the case was dismissed. It was a criminal case. They had to reinstate this officer as well. It was a major case at that time. That was Jeremy Ornstein, who then got my case. What did he do in my case? Well, he used administrative subpoenas to not only get those phone records, as Roger stated, but to get the camera footage from the Willard Hotel that all it showed is me and Roger sitting in the lobby with other people. There's nothing illegal going on. But in order to get this surveillance footage, you have to actually, it goes against the Internal Affairs' own memos, meaning their own guidelines and rules, to try to get a subpoena out of state. They're not supposed to do this. He did it in an administrative fashion. He used an administrative subpoena for this record. In the end, everything they did proved that not only Roger Stone did nothing wrong, but Sal Greco did nothing wrong. There was no criminality here. And the only thing that this guy was harping on, as Roger saw at my own internal trial, was I was friends with Roger Stone and I'm a supporter of President Trump. It's funny that now, all these years later, it's the boss of Jeremy Ornstein, Eric Adams, who was begging and pleading like a dog for a pardon. And he's the guy that said, we don't like President Trump, because that's what he fired me for. It's very ironic how this story has twisted. And yes, Roger, they did tell me when my father passed away. As he was passing away, I was tailed by one of the Jeremy Ornstein's compadres all the way to the hospital as my father lay there. And as he was dying, right outside the window, there was his compadre taking video. And we do have that footage of the video. I have it in my own discovery. So very disgusting tactics used by Jeremy Ornstein, who will be seeing, he will be questioned in this. His depositions will be coming shortly.
Now, Sal, you filed a serious lawsuit, federal lawsuit, because your rights have been violated here. But how long ago was that? I mean, the city has been stalling again and again and again. What you told me last week is what they turned over in discovery is woefully inadequate, unless you believe that nobody in the police department ever discussed this with anyone else in the police department, and that Eric Adams' office was completely unaware and uninvolved in your firing. No one believes that. Tell us about the status of the case.
So we were set to do depositions about, I'd say, a week and a half ago. And conveniently, Corporation Counsel's attorney representing the city got sick a few hours before the former police commissioner's deposition was about to take place. Then, in another strange twist of fate, he decides to, the Corporation Counsel lawyer calls my lawyer and says, oh, let's set a date because, my deposition would have been this week. But what happens now is conveniently, my attorney gets called for jury duty. So I wonder how that happened. So now everything is on hold because with jury duty in the middle, as you know, you have to complete that because you can't push it off because he had already pushed it off prior. And it's funny how they said they were going to at least try in 6 months. They did it in 5 months. And they did it conveniently when the depositions were about to take place with the police commissioner, Jeremy Ornstein, all these other people. So is it a strange coincidence, or is it once again the same nefarious characters in the background meddling in this case?
Well, justice delayed is justice denied. This lawsuit has now been pending for 3 years, yet the city has stalled on handing over materials and discovery, which they're required to do by law. And then, of course, their lawyer suddenly gets sick just before what will be extraordinarily embarrassing depositions. They're stalling. I think we all recognize that. Sal, another aspect of this is very disturbing. As you know, the New York State Democrat cabal changed the law regarding claims of sexual assault in order to allow this woman, E. Jean Carroll, to file a suit against President Donald Trump, in which she very improbably claims that Trump, a private citizen at the time, assaulted her in a dressing room in Bergdorf Goodman's, which is, I think, no longer there, but was once a very upscale department store. This was in the women's department. It's amazing that there's an episode of Law and Order that tells this exact story prior to her making this claim. She also pointed out the exact dress that she was wearing at the time she said Trump assaulted her. There's only one problem. When you check with the manufacturer of this designer dress, it hadn't even been created at the time that she said Trump assaulted her. Well, when Trump denied that he assaulted her, she sued him again for defamation. She did win a judgment. Of course she did. It's Manhattan, where no Republican, certainly one named Trump, can get a fair trial. But when they changed the law to extend the period under which someone could make these sexual assault claims, little did they know that women would come forward and say that former Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually assaulted them, and Mayor Eric Adams. I think he has 2 suits where women have come forward claiming they were sexually assaulted. But he has to pay for those personally, doesn't he, Sal? I mean, do the taxpayers of New York, are they required to pay for his legal defense in these sexual assault cases?
No, because under General Municipal Law 50K2, unless it has to fall under the scope of your duties as a police officer, as a city employee, and nowhere in that manual does it say that harassing somebody, sexual misconduct in general, which falls under harassment, rape, sexual harassment, all of that is not covered by anybody in the scope of their employment. So how is this beneficial to the taxpayers that they've been getting charged, what, $2,000 an hour by Alex Spiro, who is Eric's attorney, who then conveniently backed out of this case, may I add, after months of being on it and browbeating the victim. His case, by the way, one of the cases, the woman that said that she was sexually assaulted by Eric Adams in a vehicle, is a former police aide that they clearly know each other from back in the early 90s, late 80s. She actually worked in an area I used to work in, Coney Island. She was a police aide, and this scarred her for her life. So they went around and browbeated this woman. Meanwhile, she knows Eric very well. In fact, they were part of the same organization together, the Transit Guardians. That's why she sued the New York City Police Department and the Transit Guardians. And they were browbeating her for her deposition because she can't remember the exact date that this happened 30 years ago, and they were trying to get you in a gotcha moment. So Eric, his lawyers are playing a dirty game, which, by the way, the taxpayers are paying for. He's also in another lawsuit. It's a woman by the name of Dana Ratchlin. She was smeared by the New York City Police Department, and Eric is involved in that. So is his chief of patrol, John Schell. Deputy Commissioner Operations Kaz Daughtry, and the Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry, who have had numerous sexual misconduct lawsuits already. So the city, though, is illegally funding this. There's another notch in Eric Adams' belt of misconduct, we'll say.
The swirling corruption around the Adams administration extends far beyond the mayor himself. I read a story at the New York Post. The mayor's former police commissioner's brother was running an extortion racket, essentially going around to nightclubs and restaurants saying that if you don't want problems with code enforcement or the NYPD, you're going to have to pay me. Now you also have the case of the sheriff. The sheriff was conducting raids on these illegal pot shops. He was collecting large sums of cash, but that cash seems to have disappeared. Then there's the chancellor of the school board under Eric Adams. Evidently, he was taking money from the Chinese Communist Party. No, Eric Adams is doing a bang-up job. What am I missing here, Sal? This list just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. It's funny how all these people you're talking about are also tied into we call it the Ravenite Club of the operation, which was Con Sofrito in the Bronx, which was owned by his former police commissioner's brother, Richard Caban, but on paper, because it was managed by a mob associate and self-admitted criminal, Jimmy Rodriguez. Jimmy Rodriguez once owned Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, which, of all people, we had people like Sean Puff Daddy Combs and Jennifer Lopez show up numerous times to numerous places Jimmy Rodriguez owned. And also when Hillary Clinton, who he's pictured with, along with her husband, Bill Clinton, when he was president, Jimmy Rodriguez, when Hillary Clinton ran for the Senate in New York State, she announced it in front of Jimmy's laundromat, which happened to be under investigation, and his partner was actually arrested by the feds. And that happens a lot. Jimmy's Bronx Cafe had numerous arrests. So here's a guy that the police department shouldn't even be, within 100 feet unless they're investigating him. But they were all encapsulated. They were just, having a grand old time over there, Con Sofrito. And Jimmy is friends with everyone you mentioned, the sheriff, Anthony Miranda, Eddie Caban, the former police commissioner, obviously the brother that was extorting people, James Caban, the other brother, Richard Caban, Eric Adams himself, who is pictured there numerous times. In fact, just last week, Roger, Jimmy Rodriguez posted pictures again as if he's hanging out with everybody. The school chancellor, David Banks, the deputy mayor, at the time, he was the deputy mayor of public safety, Philip Banks, who's also being investigated. So all these people happen to hang out in one place with the same guy who has ties to virtually everything, from the underworld to politicians. It's just, this is the world of Eric Adams. Yet, I guess we're supposed to give him a pardon. He's now a great guy. He's, quote, woke, quote, cancel culture. That's the term they use. I don't know if it's a low information tagline, whatever that is, but that makes him MAGA, so we have to pardon him, I guess.
Now, let me get this straight. Ed Caban, the police commissioner, now former police commissioner, was pictured with Jimmy Rodriguez, a man who in the past has most definitely been involved in criminal activity and quite reasonably can be considered to have do so again. Wouldn't that violate the exact same regulation under which you were terminated?
100%, Roger. In fact, his place, which is Con Sofrito, had a report to the New York City Police Department, which I published. It's been up there for months, of human trafficking. Then it was all of a sudden the investigation vanished, along with the State Liquor Authority investigation, into what they called availing, which is when you front somebody else to be the person on paper as the owner, because you yourself can't have a liquor license, which would be something that Jimmy would be in, because every place he has, he's never the liquor license holder, but yet everybody says that's Jimmy's place. Clearly, he is someone who's been, involved in criminal activity. He even admitted it in the New Yorker. And I actually dive into this on my own show in one of the latest episodes. So they should not be hanging around Jimmy Rodriguez. In fact, Jeremy Ornstein will be asked, his chief, the internal affairs chief, Miguel Iglesias, he was at Con Sofrito. And how do we know? We have him standing there with City Councilman Rafael Salamanca, another character that should be investigated for the public matching fund scandals that's going on there in New York City. He's pictured at Con Sofrito. What's the chief of internal affairs doing there? Shouldn't they know the place is under investigation, has all this mischievous activity there? Very odd how the New York City Police Department treats things. And by the way, Roger, they actually altered that procedure after everything that I've been through. So the criminal association now, which is even more arbitrary, is now stating that, well, maybe this person, even though they've got associated or they've been a criminal in the past, they could be rehabilitated. But then that argument would fall because obviously, Roger, you were pardoned. So again, it's all arbitrary. Again, we don't know who makes up these rules because they treat it very differently depending on who it is that they're targeting.
Sal, I must say this, my prediction for you, the next big New York Democrat in the hot seat is Attorney General Letitia James. There's a team right now, meticulously going through all of her contributions that came in through Act Blue for her city council race and her race for Attorney General. The level of fraud is around 70%, meaning the donors who she claims gave to her did not give to her. Some cases, they don't even exist. In other places, we have sworn affidavits from them saying, no, they never sent multiple contributions to Letitia James. It's interesting how Attorney General James' net worth went from almost nothing to over $15 million. She's the owner of a large amount of real estate, but even more troubling, there are multiple complaints of her covering up sexual assault in her own office. A woman has come forward to say that Letitia James herself was sexually assaulted this woman. There are 3 other women who say that the chief of staff for Letitia James assaulted them. One of them has filed a very substantive lawsuit, but Letitia James seeks to keep all of these complaints sealed. In other words, complaints about her own personal misconduct, she argues in court, should be sealed. I don't think this is going to work. In all honesty, she's among the most corrupt attorney generals in the United States. She has left a trail, and everything I just said can be and will be documented. But I raise this because, Sal, she was a regular at Consafrito. She was there when they were doing the straw donors. So, Letitia, I don't think you're going to have a great Christmas, in all honesty.
That's right, Raj. He actually, see, what I would suggest on top of this is that she should have a bar complaint filed, because if she's hanging around all these, we call them unsavory characters, criminals like Fat Joe and Peter Guns and Puff Daddy and whoever else showed up at Con Sofrito, Jimmy himself, who she's also pictured with outside of Con Sofrito, so they know each other very well, then how could she be attorney general or have the right to prosecute somebody if she's hanging out with the very people that she convicts? So I guess certain convicted criminals are okay and others aren't, because that's what she's trying to say. Because basically all the crime is, Roger, is something that nobody can see. So basically, as a prosecutor, she has the right to either go ahead with a case or, you know, make it go by the wayside. So how many times has she done that for her friends? And what was going on at Con Sofrito? Because you're right, Roger. A lot of allegations of these fundraisers, which there's no records of, but yet you can still see the advertisements of all the politicians that were advertising their fundraisers there, Roger. In fact, the Bronx Democrat Party, $400,000 that they know of went missing, and they had to change their books and alter their books again because they got caught. And they were there at least 4 times that I could count of, and only one was written down, and it's not even written down as a party. So a lot going on there, Roger, a lot going on. Letitia James should answer for it.
Yeah, this is going to be very, very interesting, and we look forward to seeing those matters adjudicated. All right, Sal, you do a great show, the Sal Greco Show. Tell folks where they can see it.
Yeah, so if you go on Rumble or on YouTube, you could type in the Sal Greco Show. Also, if you, for major podcast streaming platforms, same thing. And if you can follow the show, subscribe to it, share it out with people. I try to put out a lot of information, kind of like what you hear here. And, it's basically like I'm still a police officer looking into things and, giving my perspective or maybe uncovering, certain crimes that may have occurred. And I do give my opinion here and there. Yes, I am a Trump supporter, so I do touch up on politics. Also, highlight, stuff like that, sports. So it's just a little bit of everything. So if you check it out, the Sal Greco Show on YouTube, Rumble, and every major podcast streaming platform.
All right. I want to thank my good friend Sal Greco for joining us today and illuminating us about the epic criminality of Eric Adams and his chameleon-like change to become a Trump-supporting conservative Republican overnight. Nobody's buying this, Eric. By the way, you are extremely well dressed, but saw you the other day wearing a scarf that I believe goes for $6,000. I'm kind of curious how you could afford a designer scarf that costs $6K on the salary of the mayor of New York City. All right, Sal, thanks for joining us today on the show.
Thank you. God bless, Roger.
Well, the pardon of Hunter Biden brings back a false narrative that sadly I have to address. As you know, in Delaware, he was charged with tax evasion. Yet people continue to go up on X and other social media platforms and say, well, Roger Stone and his wife evaded $2.3 million in taxes, and they were not penalized or prosecuted. The problem with that is, of course, that it's not true. Hunter Biden failed to report over $10 million of income. He never reported it to the IRS. My wife and I have reported every single dime we've ever made in income since I have been an adult and filing tax returns. Yes, I do owe the IRS $2 million from my 2006 taxes. But what they don't tell you is that only 400,000 of that is past due taxes, and the rest is interest and penalties. To say that I evaded taxes is laughable because for every year since 2006, 12 months a year, every year, I have made a sizable payment to the IRS paying down my tax debt. So I didn't get a break of any kind. When Hunter Biden's lawyers tried to make this case in federal court in Delaware that Roger Stone and his wife were guilty of tax evasion, but they were treated differently, the judge himself said that's apples and oranges. For those who want to go out and say that I'm guilty of tax evasion, well, there is a very high bar on libel and slander, but I may have to sue you because it's simply not true. I did have to get that out of the way. While we're at it, however, Judge Andrew Napolitano, very good friend of mine of many years, who's been on the Stone Zone and also on my 77 WABC radio show multiple times, had an excellent analysis about whether this pardon of Hunter Biden might open the Bidens up to new legal problems. Let's take a quick look.
Joe shot himself in the foot with the pardon. Here's why. If the son, Hunter, were dragged before the House Oversight Committee last week and asked, did you funnel money to your father from Burisma while he was vice president of the United States? His answer, I declined to answer under the rights accorded to me by the Fifth Amendment. If you asked him that question today, he has no Fifth Amendment rights. By accepting the pardon, he gave up his Fifth Amendment rights, and he would be forced to answer that question no matter who is inculpated.
What the hell crap does Chris Hines and Hunter Biden know about energy? But they're on the board of directors.
Right.
And they made millions of dollars sitting on the board of directors. It's a crime syndicate.
Well, that crime syndicate cannot be prosecuted because the statute of limitations has run, but it can be exposed, and Hunter can be the instrument of the exposure. Now, if he asserts a Fifth Amendment right now, they'll take him before a federal judge who'll order him to answer, and if he still persists in not answering, he'll be incarcerated for up to 2 years. An incarceration that is not pardonable.
Excellent analysis. Now, I'm very familiar with this because after I received a full and unconditional presidential pardon, which, by the way, is very hard to find that when you go online. You can find many stories about the president commuting my sentence, but, well, they seem to have a willful effort to bury that point. Piece in the Politico by a man named Nick Reisman about the surging campaign of Anthony Constantino. He is the dynamic businessman from upstate New York who has announced his intention to seek the seat that is being vacated by Elise Stefanik. That special election date has not yet been set and won't be set until the seat is officially vacated. And that would be when the president sends the nomination of Stefanik to the Senate for confirmation. By the way, I think the appointment of Elise Stefanik is among President Trump's absolute best appointments. But in that story, it says that I am supporting Constantino, which I am because he's a very good guy. You remember him. He's the guy who put the sign on top of his factory in Amsterdam, New York, giant sign that said, "Vote for Trump." And then the Democrat mayor of Amsterdam threatened to have him arrested and jailed if he would not take the sign down. It's a First Amendment right. The mayor actually argued that the sign was a public safety hazard because people might be distracted by it if they drove by his factory. This shows that liberalism is a mental disease. Fortunately, the courts intervened, and because Anthony Constantino had an excellent lawyer, that did not happen. But he stood tall for free speech. Prior to this, Anthony Constantino had never really been involved in politics, but he had built a multi-million-dollar successful online printing company, stickermule.com. Stickermule.com. Urge you to check them out. And now he's taken the plunge to seek this seat in Congress so he can stand up for President Donald Trump's agenda. Anyway, in this Politico story, it mentions that my sentence was commuted, raises the ridiculous question about whether my support might be problematic for Mr. Constantino. A poll among Republican primary voters showed that I have a 79% approval rating. I think most Americans know that I was charged in a politically motivated case, and the judge in my case withheld exculpatory evidence from my defense attorneys that would have proved my innocence. Most people who followed this case know that there was no Russian collusion for me to lie about. There was no WikiLeaks collaboration for me to lie about. In fact, Robert Mueller was forced to admit in the final report, which the lawyers for BuzzFeed had to fight to get disgorged by the Department of Justice, that in fact he'd found no other crime on my part. So Andrew Weissman, whose turn in the barrel is coming, my friends, perhaps the most epic prosecutor in U.S. history, along a line of prosecutorial misconduct, covering up mob murders when he was assistant DA in Brooklyn, the man who destroyed the Enron company, destroyed Arthur Anderson, destroyed a number of executives at Merrill Lynch, unanimously reversed by the Supreme Court in all of those cases, and tongue-lashed for prosecutorial misconduct. This is the Andrew Weissman who destroyed the cell phone memories of the cell phones of Robert Mueller's thug prosecutors when he knew that they had been subpoenaed by special counsel John Durham. That's called destruction of evidence and obstruction of justice. No, I think that Mr. Weissman is probably not going to have a great holiday because his criminal activities are coming to the fore. Let's continue with the news of the day. Pete Hegseth, who's the president's nominee for Secretary of Defense, is being subjected to what we call the full Brett Kavanaugh, a campaign of smear and innuendo The permanent establishment is petrified of the fact that this decorated combat veteran might actually return our military forces to being a lethal fighting force. Between mandatory vaccinations and the crazy DEI policies of the Biden and Obama administrations, our military is in terrible shape. People I respect, like Colonel Douglas McGregor or General Michael Flynn, Colonel John Mills, and others, tell me that they seriously doubt that our military could wage a two-theater war. They're not even sure we could successfully wage a one-theater war. And of course, we also ship billions of dollars and equipment to Ukraine, equipment that is now, of course, not available to us. The media is clamoring for Pete Hegseth's skin, but he refuses to give it to them. This guy is a tough guy. He's not going to back down. Let's take a quick look at Pete Hegseth answering questions about this effort to destroy his character.
Process to go through and meet with senators and talk to them, especially members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, whose passion is the Defense Department, and our warfighters, to hear what they want to do to make sure that department is properly oriented for the threats of the world and make sure that we're putting the warfighters first. That's what Donald Trump asked me to do. Your job is to bring a warfighting ethos back to the Pentagon. Your job is to make sure that it's lethality, lethality, lethality. Everything else is gone. Everything else that distracts from that shouldn't be happening. That's the message I'm hearing from senators in that advise and consent process. It's been a wonderful process.
The other appointment here that I think is probably the most pivotal and important one is that of Kash Patel to be the FBI director. It's kind of funny to watch disgraced former deputy FBI director Andrew McCabe, a man who was never even a station chief in the FBI before being elevated to the assistant director or deputy director position, a position for which he was completely unqualified, criticizing the qualifications of Kash Patel, who was a government intelligence prosecutor who prosecuted over 50 intelligence cases, former chief of staff for the acting director, Secretary of Defense. That's the man running the Defense Department. Former chief counsel of the House Intelligence Committee. He's the man who conducted the House Committee investigation into Russian collusion. That's why his appointment strikes fear into the hearts of people like John Brennan, James Comey, Susan Rice, and then Vice President Joe Biden, because, well, Kash Patel knows what they did and he knows when they did it, and he can document that. No, my friends, it is not revenge. It is not retaliation. It is a rebalancing of the scales of justice. One system where, for example, if General James Clapper goes before the Congress and says that there is no metadata collection program on American citizens, which Edward Snowden proved was a lie, well, then General Clapper should be prosecuted. You see, I was prosecuted for making misstatements to Congress, but in truth, to violate the false statement law, your comment has to be both willful, but more importantly, it has to be material. In other words, it has to be covering up some other crime. In this case, the illegal collection of data on individual Americans, which General Clapper denied happened. Clapper wasn't prosecuted. Instead, he went to Vermont College, where he teaches ethics. How about that? Also has a great gig at CNN, which means people in airports all over America get to see him, but not many other people. All right, I think we've run out of time for today. I want to thank you for joining us on the Stone Zone. I also want to remind you that to make sure you don't miss any of our programs, at 4 o'clock Central, you can see the Stone Zone at worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com. That's 5 o'clock Eastern, of course. But if you miss the great show there, you can go see it later at rumble.com/Roger Stone. That's rumble.com/Roger Stone. There you see it. I would urge you to go to the App Store right now, download the Rumble app, follow us. You see the little green button, and then set yourself a notification so you don't miss any of our great shows here. We're produced by the folks at Worldview Tube. We're very proud to be part of their family, but you can catch it later on. If you can't catch it at Worldview Tube because you're at work or you have other family obligations, you can always catch the show later at 8 p.m. All right, that's about it for today. Please join me in praying for the safety of our president and his family between now and the time that he becomes president on January 20th. But in the meantime, God bless you and Godspeed, and we'll see you tomorrow.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?